Princess Lyra had always been called the weakest daughter of His Majesty. Among the shining warriors of the Veyron royal family, she was small, timid, and clumsy. Her sisters could summon storms with their hands, bend the very air to their will, and fight in battles that shook planets. Lyra, however, struggled to lift a training sword without dropping it. At court, whispers followed her like shadows. "Weakling," they said. "She cannot even carry honor to the kingdom." Lyra's mother tried to comfort her, saying, "Strength is not only in magic, Lyra. One day you will find your own way." Lyra wanted to believe it, but the words felt hollow. She spent most days reading old texts and watching her sisters train, wishing she could be more like them. Everything changed the morning the Royal Council announced the pairing. The galactic kingdom of Veyron had been threatened by rogue factions. Along the frontier planets, they were unpredictable, brutal, and capable of destroying settlements with ease. To strengthen their defenses, the Council had decided to send a royal representative to work alongside a human warrior, a species humans often feared and doubted. Lyra's stomach sank when she heard the decree. She would be sent to the frontier, not alone, but with a human. The name Ethan was spoken with respect among the council. He had no magic, no royal blood, yet he had survived countless conflicts and protected whole colonies with nothing but his skill, intelligence, and courage. To the court, this pairing was a gamble, almost an insult to the royal family. The weakest daughter of Veyron paired with a human soldier. When Lyra first met Ethan, she was surprised by how ordinary he seemed. He did not wear royal armor, nor did he carry any strange magical artifacts. His uniform was simple, practical. His hair was slightly messy and his eyes had a sharp, calculating look. Yet when he smiled, it was not arrogant. It was steady, calm, almost comforting. "Princess Lyra," he said politely. "I'm Ethan. We will be partners on this mission." Lyra nodded, unsure if she should feel fear or hope. I'm honored," she stammered. Ethan inclined his head. "We'll need to trust each other. I've seen many who underestimate me. I hope you will not." Lyra's cheeks burned. She felt as though everyone in the room was staring at her weaknesses. Her fingers twitched nervously and she wished she could hide in the shadows. But Ethan did not laugh. He did not judge. Somehow his calm presence made her feel slightly braver. The journey to the frontier was long. The starship they boarded hummed with energy and stretched across the sky like a silver serpent. Lyra watched planets and stars pass by, trying to imagine herself as more than the weakest daughter. She observed Ethan as he checked their equipment, organized maps, and planned routes through dangerous territories. Every small action of his seemed purposeful, precise, and fearless. Lyra felt both admiration and envy. How could someone without magic survive so easily where she could barely lift a blade? When they landed on the frontier planet, the real challenge began. The air smelled harsh with sharp minerals that cut through the lungs. The ground was uneven, rocky, and unstable. Lyra tripped twice before Ethan could steady her. The rogue alien scouts were rumored to roam these lands, and the thought made her pulse race. She could see Ethan moving silently, surveying the horizon, with keen eyes always ready. Lyra felt out of place. She wanted to run back to the safety of the starship. But then she remembered her mother's words. Strength is not only in magic. Perhaps courage could be something different, something she could discover within herself. That night, while the camp slept under a sky of unfamiliar stars, Lyra secretly took out a training blade. Her first swings were awkward, clumsy, and uncoordinated. She fell multiple times. Yet she did not stop. Each swing, each step, felt slightly better than the last. She began to understand that even though she could not summon storms or control the winds, she could think, she could observe, and she could plan. Ethan noticed her from the edge of the camp. "You're practicing," he said quietly, not as a criticism but as a statement of fact. Lyra froze. I can't be as strong as you," she admitted. "Maybe not," he said, walking closer. "But strength isn't only about power. Sometimes it's about knowing what to do when everyone else freezes. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt a spark of something new, something she had never felt watching her sisters. Hope. Perhaps being weak was not the end of her story. Perhaps it was the beginning. The first night on the frontier ended with quiet determination. Lyra lay awake, thinking of the mission, Ethan's calm confidence, and the dangers ahead. For the first time, she believed she might survive. For the first time, she imagined she might even fight back. And so, the weakest daughter of His Majesty, trembling yet determined, prepared to step into a world far larger and more dangerous than anything she had ever known. The morning sun barely touched the jagged peaks of the frontier planet when Lyra awoke to the sound of movement. Ethan was already preparing the camp, checking supplies and scanning the horizon with alert eyes. Lyra rubbed her arms, still stiff, from the previous night's secret training. She felt both nervous and eager. Today she had to prove she could at least try, even if she was far from the warriors her family admired. Ethan noticed her as she approached. "You're up early," he said. His tone was calm, but there was a hint of encouragement in his eyes. "Good. The first challenge is not just strength, it's endurance and attention." Lyra nodded. "I'll try." Their first exercise was simple for Ethan, a series of coordinated movements across the rocky terrain. For Lyra, it felt impossible. Her legs stumbled over jagged stones, and her balance failed at every step. Ethan moved beside her, gently guiding her posture, correcting her stance and showing her small tricks to shift her weight. "You have to trust your instincts," he said. "Don't think about being weak. Think about what the next step is, and commit to it." Lyra tried to focus, her mind racing with doubts. She imagined the court's whispers and her father's disappointed gaze. Still, she followed Ethan's instructions, step by step, until she managed to complete the course without falling. It was far from perfect, but it was progress. During a brief break, Ethan handed her a water flask. "You're improving faster than you think," he said. Lyra flushed, unsure if she should believe him. "I'm not strong," she whispered. "Strength isn't always visible," Ethan replied. "Sometimes it's in seeing danger and still moving forward." They spent the next few hours navigating simulated combat scenarios. Alien drones designed to mimic rogue scouts moved unpredictably across the training field. Lyra froze the first time one came near, her hands trembling. Ethan gently pulled her back, showing her how to anticipate the drone's patterns instead of reacting in fear. "You can't control everything," he explained, "but you can control how you respond." Lyra's eyes widened as she began to understand. She didn't need to be the fastest or the strongest. She could watch, plan, and act. Her first successful strike against a drone surprised even her. She felt a rush of pride she had never known before. By midday, the pair paused near a small stream. Lyra's clothes were torn, her muscles ached, but there was a spark in her eyes. Ethan smiled faintly, noticing her change. "You're learning faster than most recruits," he said. Lyra looked at him, her hands shaking slightly from exhaustion. I want to be useful. I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," Ethan said firmly. "You have a way of seeing things others miss. That is power too." The rest of the day was filled with more exercises, each slightly harder than the last. Lyra fell many times, scraped her arms, and struggled to keep pace, but she noticed small improvements. She began to anticipate Ethan's movements, helping him cover blind spots during simulated attacks. Her mind was quick and her instincts grew sharper with each challenge. By evening, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of red and purple. Lyra sat by the campfire, exhausted but alive with energy. Ethan joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're different from any partner I've ever had," he said. "You think in ways I cannot. You notice things most people ignore." Lyra felt a warmth of pride swell in her chest. For the first time, she realized that being weak did not mean she was useless. She could fight in her own way, with her own strengths. A sudden sound broke the quiet, a distant scream from the edge of the camp. Lyra jumped to her feet, instinctively reaching for her training blade. Ethan was already moving toward the sound, alert and ready. Without thinking, Lyra followed him, her steps steady despite the fear. A group of small alien scouts had approached the camp, curious and aggressive. Ethan engaged them, but Lyra noticed a loose rock above one of the scouts. She remembered his lessons about using the environment, about thinking before acting, and she acted. With careful timing, she pushed the rock, causing it to roll and knock the scout off balance. Ethan glanced at her, eyes wide. Together they subdued the small group without serious harm. When the danger passed, Ethan looked at her with respect. "You saved the day," he said simply. Lyra felt a surge of pride and relief. She had acted, without magic, without brute strength, yet she had made a real difference. For the first time she felt that maybe she could be more than the weakest daughter. That night Lyra lay under the unfamiliar stars, reflecting on the day. She had tripped, fallen, and feared failure. But she had also learned to act with thought and courage. She realized that fear did not mean weakness. It could be a guide if she learned to trust herself. Ethan slept nearby, and for the first time, Lyra felt she had a true partner, someone who saw her as capable, not fragile. She whispered to the stars above, promising herself that she would continue to grow, continue to fight, and maybe, just maybe, she could become someone her kingdom could be proud of. And so, the journey of the weakest daughter continued. Step by step, challenge by challenge, slowly turning fear into courage and doubt into determination. The frontier planet was unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. The sky was a dull orange, streaked with dark clouds, and jagged mountains rose like sharp teeth from the barren land. The air was thick with dust, and the scent of minerals and metal filled her nostrils. The council had warned that rogue alien factions roamed these lands, attacking settlements without mercy. Lyra's heart pounded as she stepped from the starship, the weight of her mission pressing heavily on her small shoulders. Ethan moved with steady confidence, scanning the horizon and giving quick, precise instructions to the soldiers accompanying them. Lyra followed close behind, gripping her training blade and trying not to stumble over the uneven terrain. Her first thought was fear, fear of failure, fear of the unknown, and fear of being useless. But as she watched Ethan act decisively, she felt a spark of determination ignite within her. Their first encounter came sooner than expected. A group of rogue alien scouts emerged from behind a rocky outcrop, their movements swift and coordinated. They carried weapons unfamiliar to Lyra, with blades that glowed faintly and claws that could tear through armor. The soldiers tensed, and Ethan gestured for them to hold position. "Stay close," he said to Lyra. "Watch and follow my lead." Lyra nodded, her heart hammering. The creatures advanced and chaos erupted. Soldiers fired energy bolts. Alien shrieks filled the air, and dust swirled around them. Lyra froze for a moment, unable to move as a scout lunged at Ethan. Without thinking, she raised her blade, but it felt heavy and awkward. Her first swing missed, and she stumbled backward. Ethan grunted as he parried another attack. "Lyra! Use the terrain," he shouted. She looked around and noticed a large boulder nearby. The memory of their training flashed through her mind. The lessons about observing, planning, and using the environment to your advantage. With a deep breath, she shifted her weight and pushed the boulder just as a scout moved beneath it. The creature was thrown off balance, and Ethan quickly subdued it. Ethan's eyes widened in surprise. "Well done," he said, his tone carrying genuine respect. Lyra felt her chest swell with a mixture of relief and pride. For the first time, she realized she could contribute in ways that did not rely on strength or magic. Her mind and quick thinking were enough. The battle continued. Lyra worked alongside Ethan, anticipating enemy movements and using the terrain to her advantage. She knocked over rocks, distracted the scouts, and guided soldiers to safer positions. Every action, though small, had an impact. She felt a thrill as her strategies succeeded, and the fear that had gripped her for years began to fade. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, The alien scouts retreated into the jagged mountains, leaving the battlefield in uneasy silence. The soldiers were bruised and tired, but unharmed. Ethan turned to Lyra, his expression serious but approving. "You've got potential," he said quietly. "More than I expected?" Lyra blushed, unsure how to respond. She had saved him, yes, but it still felt surreal. All her life she had been told she was weak, and now she had faced real danger and survived, even helped win the fight. The aftermath of the battle was not easy. The soldiers checked their equipment, treated minor injuries, and set up a temporary camp. Lyra sat on a rock, exhausted but alert. She watched Ethan moving among the soldiers, offering advice and encouragement. Despite the chaos, he remained calm, focused, and in control. Lyra realized something important. Courage did not mean the absence of fear. It meant acting despite fear, using your mind and heart to guide you when the world seemed against you. She had done it today, and the thought filled her with new strength. Ethan came to sit beside her, handing her a water flask. "You didn't just survive," he said. "You changed the outcome. That's the difference between someone who's weak and someone who's brave." Lyra took a deep drink, feeling the cool liquid refresh her. I didn't know I could do that," she admitted. "You didn't know because no one gave you a chance," Ethan replied. "But now you've seen it for yourself. You're stronger than you think." As night fell, the orange sky deepened into a dusky red, and the stars began to appear above the jagged mountains. The soldiers slept, trusting in Ethan's leadership, while Lyra sat quietly replaying the day in her mind. Each movement, each decision, each small act of courage had built something inside her, a foundation she had never had before. Lyra realized that being the weakest daughter did not define her. She could be clever, observant, and resourceful. She could make a difference. She could protect lives. And maybe, just maybe, she could become the warrior her kingdom never expected her to be. Ethan glanced at her once more before settling down to rest. "Tomorrow will be harder," he said, "but I think you're ready." Lyra smiled faintly, feeling the first true confidence in her life. "I'll try," she said softly. And with that, the weakest daughter of His Majesty, trembling but determined, closed her eyes under the alien stars, ready to face the battles yet to come. The frontier mission had begun smoothly, but Lyra and Ethan soon discovered that the galaxy was far less predictable than they had imagined. During a routine patrol near a rocky canyon, their starship was suddenly caught in a trap. Alien saboteurs had planted mines on the landing path, and the ship shook violently as it skidded off course, crashing onto the jagged ground below. Smoke rose in thick clouds and alarms blared. Lyra's heart pounded as debris fell around them. Ethan immediately assessed the situation. "We're alive, but the ship is damaged," he said calmly. "We need to move before more enemies arrive." Lyra nodded, trying to steady her breath. For a moment, fear threatened to overwhelm her, but she remembered the lessons she had learned in the past days. Courage was not the absence of fear, but action despite it. She took Ethan's hand, allowing his calm presence to guide her, and followed him toward safer ground. The planet itself was harsh and unforgiving. Sharp rocks jutted out from the ground, winds howled through the canyons, and the sun beat down relentlessly. Yet, they had no choice but to move. The alien scouts had not stopped searching, and they knew the terrain favored the predators. "We need shelter and water," Ethan said, scanning the horizon. "Keep your eyes open for any signs of danger or resources." Lyra spotted a narrow cave along the canyon wall. Its entrance was partially hidden by jagged stones, offering a chance for cover. "There," she said, pointing. "We can hide there for now." Ethan nodded. "Good eye. Let's move carefully." Inside the cave, Lyra examined their surroundings. It was small but secure. There were shallow pools of water and natural formations that could serve as traps if enemies approached. She realized that this was her chance to contribute. For the first time, she felt truly capable. Over the next few hours, they worked together to set up a temporary camp. Ethan handled practical matters like repairing basic tools, while Lyra focused on strategy. She noticed loose rocks above the cave's entrance and arranged them so that any intruder could be trapped or slowed. She used fallen branches and stones to create noise alarms. Ethan watched quietly, impressed by her instincts. "You're thinking like a soldier," he said finally. "And not just a soldier, a leader." Lyra's cheeks flushed. "I just want to survive," she admitted. "Survival is the first step," Ethan replied. "But what you're doing goes beyond that. You're protecting both of us." That night, they shared a simple meal of rations and water. The wind howled outside, carrying distant alien cries. Lyra shivered but refused to show fear. Ethan glanced at her, sensing her resolve. "Tomorrow we need to find a way off this planet," he said, "and we need to be ready for more enemies." Lyra nodded. She had spent the past few days learning to fight, to move, and to think under pressure. Now she realized that her true strength lay not in magic or brute force, but in her mind. She could plan, anticipate, and act in ways that even the most powerful warriors might overlook. Suddenly, a faint noise echoed from outside the cave. Lyra's instincts kicked in. She motioned for Ethan to stay low and whispered, "Something's coming." Ethan nodded and they both crouched in the shadows. Two alien scouts crept along the canyon floor, their glowing eyes scanning for signs of life. Lyra quickly assessed the situation. She grabbed a loose stone and flicked it toward a pile of debris at the cave entrance. The noise drew the aliens' attention. One moved forward to investigate, and Lyra gave Ethan a small nod. Together, they executed a simple but clever trap. The rocks above the entrance shifted, knocking the scout off balance while Ethan subdued the second with precise strikes. The aliens were captured without serious harm, and Lyra felt a thrill of accomplishment. "You were brilliant," Ethan said quietly after the encounter. "You thought faster than the enemies could react." Lyra felt her confidence grow. She had acted decisively, not through power, but through observation and planning. She realized that this was what made her different from her sisters, and that difference could be her greatest strength. By the next morning, they had explored more of the canyon, mapping safe paths and securing fresh water sources. Lyra's skills continued to improve, and Ethan relied on her judgment more with each step. The experience of surviving together in a hostile environment had created a bond of trust between them that no words could describe. For the first time, Lyra felt that she was more than a timid princess. She was capable, clever, and resilient. She had faced real danger and had not only survived but helped turn the situation in their favor. As they prepared to move out of the canyon, Lyra looked at Ethan. "I think I can do this," she said, quietly. "You already are," he replied with a smile. "And the next challenges will only make you stronger." And so, the weakest daughter of His Majesty continued her journey, not as a timid girl hiding behind her family's reputation, but as a resourceful and fearless warrior in training, ready to face whatever dangers the galaxy could throw at her. Lyra and Ethan had returned to the kingdom after months on the frontier, but their journey was far from over. The castle walls, which once felt like a safe haven, now seemed too quiet, too still. Lyra noticed the whispered glances of courtiers and the subtle nods of soldiers who had heard of her exploits on the frontier. Some looked at her with surprise, others with doubt, but she no longer cared. She had seen what she was capable of, and she would not let anyone underestimate her again. It was in the royal library that Lyra stumbled upon a dusty, ancient scroll hidden among records of the kingdom's history. She unrolled it carefully and read the faded words. The prophecy spoke of a royal with hidden weakness, who would be paired with a human and become a legendary warrior, saving the kingdom in its darkest hour. Lyra's breath caught. The words described her exactly. The weakest daughter paired with a human, destined for greatness. Ethan noticed the scroll in her hands. "Did you find something interesting?" he asked. Lyra's voice trembled slightly. It talks about someone like me, someone who is weak, but will become a warrior with a human partner. It's a prophecy. Ethan studied her carefully. Prophecies can inspire, but what matters is what you do with your abilities. The prophecy doesn't fight for you. You do. Lyra nodded. His words made sense. The scroll gave her hope, but her courage and skill would have to come from herself. She tucked it away, a secret reminder that she had a purpose greater than anyone had imagined. In the following weeks, Lyra began training openly, no longer hiding in shadows or doubting herself. With Ethan's guidance, she learned to combine the precision of human combat techniques with her own natural abilities. She practiced maneuvers that relied on intelligence, observation, and quick thinking rather than raw strength. Every day she improved, moving faster, striking more accurately, and learning to anticipate her opponent's moves. The soldiers began to notice the change. A timid princess had become focused and confident. Even her sisters, who had once dismissed her, now watched with curiosity. Lyra no longer felt small. She had found her own form of power, one that was different, but just as vital. The kingdom received urgent news. The rogue alien faction that had threatened the frontier planets was now launching a large-scale assault on the capital. Panic spread quickly through the court, but Lyra remained calm. She knew this was the moment she had been preparing for. Ethan stood beside her as the council debated strategies. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. Lyra met his gaze. "I have to be. I can't let anyone down, not my kingdom, not you, and not myself." The battle began at dawn. Alien ships darkened the skies and the ground shook with their powerful weapons. Soldiers scrambled to defend the walls, while magical energy flashed across the battlefield. Lyra took a deep breath and stepped forward with Ethan, leading a small strike team into the chaos. The battlefield was overwhelming. Screams, explosions, and alien roars filled the air. Lyra felt fear, but she refused to let it control her. She scanned the terrain, noticing weak points in the enemy formation, and directed the strike team with clear commands. They followed her lead, surprised at her decisiveness and accuracy. Ethan fought alongside her, deflecting attacks and covering her flank. "You're doing it," he shouted over the noise. Lyra nodded, heart pounding, and focused on her plan. She led a team through a narrow canyon, using it to ambush a group of enemy fighters. Her strategies relied on clever traps, quick thinking, and timing. She did not need to be the strongest, only the smartest. The ambush was successful, the enemy was pushed back, and the strike team gained ground. As the battle raged on, Lyra realized her confidence had grown beyond what she thought possible. She was not only fighting for survival, she was inspiring others. Soldiers who had doubted her now followed her commands without hesitation. Her mind, sharp and adaptable, became a weapon just as effective as any sword or spell. Hours passed, and the tide of battle slowly turned. Lyra and Ethan moved through the battlefield, coordinating squads, neutralizing threats, and saving lives. The weakest daughter had become a leader, a warrior in her own right. By nightfall, the enemy forces were retreating, unable to break the kingdom's defenses. Lyra stood on a small rise watching the horizon. Exhausted but triumphant, she realized how far she had come. She was no longer the timid princess who trembled at the thought of danger. She was resourceful, brave, and capable of facing any challenge. Ethan approached her, a proud smile on his face. "You've done more than survive," he said. "You've led. You've fought. You've changed the course of this battle." Lyra felt a warmth of pride that had nothing to do with magic or strength. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "No," Ethan replied. "You did this yourself. I just helped you see what you were capable of." That night, as the kingdom celebrated its victory, Lyra walked quietly through the courtyard. The stars above seemed brighter than ever, and for the first time, she truly believed in herself. She had embraced her destiny, faced fear, and emerged stronger. The prophecy was no longer just words on a scroll. It was a reflection of what she had already become, a fearless warrior ready to protect her kingdom and stand beside her human partner as equals. The night was dark and the stars above the battlefield twinkled like distant fireflies. The rogue alien fleet had been forced to retreat, but their flagship remained a threat. It hovered above the capital, its massive shadow casting fear over the kingdom. Lyra and Ethan prepared for the most dangerous mission yet: infiltrate the enemy flagship and neutralize its command core before it could launch another attack. The moment they boarded the small stealth ship, Lyra's heart raced. The enemy vessel loomed ahead, silent and imposing. She gripped the controls, reminding herself of the lessons she had learned. Courage was not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. Ethan noticed her tense hands and gave her a reassuring nod. "We've trained for this. Stick to the plan and trust your instincts." The infiltration began. Using the ship's stealth systems, they slipped past patrol drones and security barriers. Lyra moved quietly, observing patterns in the alien guard's movements. Her small size and agility allowed her to hide where others could not. Each step was calculated, precise, and careful. Inside the flagship, the corridors were dimly lit, with alien symbols etched into the walls. Strange hums of energy filled the air. Lyra's pulse quickened as she and Ethan approached the command core. They had to disable it without alerting the entire ship, or the mission and possibly the kingdom would be lost. Ethan whispered, "We'll go together. I'll handle the front, you cover the sides. Watch for anything unusual." Lyra nodded, her mind sharp and alert. As they moved, she noticed a weak point in the hallway, a series of overhead conduits that could be dislodged. With careful timing, she pushed one, causing a small section of the ceiling to collapse and block the path of incoming patrols. Ethan glanced at her, eyes wide with approval. "You're incredible," he whispered. Lyra only smiled faintly. Praise was not what she needed. Focus was. They pressed forward, avoiding security drones and using shadows as their allies. Every move required thought, timing, and courage. Lyra realized that all her months of training, the frontier, the canyon, the ambushes, had prepared her for this moment. She was no longer timid. She was a strategist, a warrior, a leader. As they reached the control room, they found the command core protected by a small squad of elite alien guards. Ethan drew his weapon and prepared to engage, but Lyra stepped forward. "Wait," she whispered. "Let me try something." She observed the guards' positions and movements. Using a combination of misdirection and the environment, she lured them one by one into a series of traps. Rocks fell from the ceiling, doors were locked behind them, and the guards were incapacitated without a direct fight. Ethan watched in awe. Lyra was fearless, not because she was stronger than the aliens, but because she used her mind in ways they could not predict. With the path clear, they entered the control room. The command core pulsed with energy, a massive orb of light and power. Lyra examined the controls, her hands steady despite the danger. "We need to overload the core," she said, "but carefully, or it will destroy the ship instantly." Ethan nodded, trusting her judgment. Lyra used her knowledge of both Veyron technology and human tactics to manipulate the core's energy flow. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and for a moment, it seemed like the core might explode. But Lyra remained calm, adjusting the sequence with precision. Slowly, the core's energy stabilized, then shut down completely. A wave of relief washed over both of them. The flagship's systems, powered down, and the threat it posed to the kingdom vanished. Lyra turned to Ethan, a triumphant smile on her face. "It's done," she said, her voice steady. Ethan grinned, his admiration evident. "You've done more than anyone could imagine. You're not the weakest daughter anymore. You're a warrior, fearless and brilliant." Lyra felt a surge of pride but also humility. She had faced the impossible and relied on her mind, her instincts, and her courage. She realized that strength was not just physical or magical. It was the ability to see solutions when others saw only danger, to act when fear threatened to freeze you, and to trust yourself even when the world doubted you. They left the flagship, together, boarding their ship as it began to drift away from the disabled vessel. The stars above seemed brighter now, almost as if celebrating their victory. Soldiers on the ground watched the flagship's collapse with awe, unaware of the precision and courage that had made it possible. As the stealth ship returned to the kingdom, Lyra reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the timid princess who could barely lift a training sword to the strategist who had neutralized an entire alien flagship, she had grown in ways she never imagined. Her partnership with Ethan had been more than a lesson in combat. It had shown her what courage, trust, and determination truly meant. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're ready for anything now," he said quietly. Lyra looked out at the horizon, her eyes filled with determination and hope. "I'll be ready," she replied, "for my kingdom, for our people, and for whatever comes next." And so, the weakest daughter of His Majesty, once timid and unsure, had transformed into a fearless warrior. She had faced impossible odds, relied on her intelligence and instincts, and emerged victorious, not just as a survivor but as a leader. The kingdom had seen her strength, and she had discovered it within herself. The kingdom was alive with celebration. Flags fluttered in the wind, bells rang from the towers, and the streets were filled with people cheering for the heroes who had saved their home. Lyra stepped onto the balcony of the royal palace, her heart pounding, not with fear but with pride and purpose. The once timid princess, the so-called weakest daughter of His Majesty, was now recognized for her courage, intelligence, and leadership. Ethan stood beside her, smiling quietly. He had always been her guide, her partner, and her friend. Now he watched as Lyra accepted the honor that she had earned through strategy, bravery, and determination. The crowd below erupted in cheers when they saw her, chanting her name in excitement. Her father, the king, appeared at her side, his face a mix of relief, pride, and astonishment. "Lyra," he said, his voice steady but warm, "you have done what many thought impossible. You have proven that true strength comes in many forms, not just through magic or power." Lyra bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Father. I have learned that courage and intelligence are as important as any spell or sword. I only hope to serve the kingdom well." The king placed a hand on her shoulder. "You will serve the kingdom better than anyone else. Today you are not just my daughter. You are a warrior, a leader, and a symbol of hope for all of Veyron." Lyra's eyes shifted to Ethan. He nodded slightly, silently acknowledging their shared journey. Without his guidance and trust, she would never have discovered the depth of her own abilities. She smiled, feeling a sense of equality and mutual respect that went beyond titles or bloodlines. Humans and Veyrons side by side could achieve great things. The court, once skeptical of her abilities, now looked upon her with admiration. Her sisters, who had often dismissed her as weak, bowed deeply, their expressions filled with respect. Soldiers who had doubted her judgment now sought her advice. Lyra realized that her journey had changed not only her but also those around her. She had shattered old expectations and opened a new path for anyone who felt underestimated or overlooked. That evening, as the festivities continued, Lyra and Ethan walked through the palace gardens. The stars above mirrored the celebrations. Below, sparkling brightly as if the universe itself recognized their victory. Lyra felt the weight of her journey and the promise of her future. She had faced countless dangers, learned to trust herself, and transformed fear into action. "I never imagined it would end like this," Lyra admitted softly. "From the weakest daughter to this." Ethan smiled. "You imagined it. You just didn't believe it at first. All I did was help you see what was already inside you." Lyra nodded. "You've taught me that strength is not just about fighting. It's about thinking, observing, and having the courage to act when it matters most. I'll carry that lesson always." The next days were filled with celebrations, honors, and the rebuilding of the kingdom's defenses. Lyra took an active role in training soldiers, sharing her strategies and mentoring young recruits who, like her, had once been overlooked. She combined human techniques with Veyron tactics, creating new approaches that made the kingdom stronger than ever. Ethan continued to fight alongside her in training exercises, offering guidance but never overshadowing her leadership. Together they became a symbol of unity between humans and Veyrons, a living proof that trust, respect, and teamwork could overcome prejudice, fear, and doubt. One quiet night, Lyra stood on the balcony alone, looking at the stars. The prophecy she had once read was no longer just words on a scroll. She had lived it. She had transformed from a timid, weak princess into a fearless warrior. She had faced impossible odds, outsmarted her enemies, and protected her kingdom. And she had done it not by relying solely on magic or strength, but on intelligence, courage, and the partnership of a human warrior. Lyra's gaze drifted across the horizon toward the frontier planets she had once feared. She knew there would always be challenges, always be threats. But now, she was ready. She was no longer defined by weakness, but by the choices she made, the risks she took, and the strength she had discovered within herself. The kingdom slept, below safe under her watch, and for the first time Lyra felt truly at peace. She was no longer just a princess or a daughter. She was a leader, a protector, and a warrior. And beside her, Ethan remained, a constant reminder that courage and trust could transcend worlds, species, and expectations. With a deep breath, Lyra whispered to the stars above, "I am ready for whatever comes next." The night was silent, except for the soft wind and the distant twinkle of stars. It carried the promise of a new era, one where humans and Veyrons would face the galaxy together, stronger and united. Lyra smiled, confident and fearless, knowing she had finally found her place in the universe. And so, the weakest daughter of His Majesty had become the strongest warrior of her kingdom, not through magic alone, but through courage, intelligence, and the heart of someone who refused to give up. She was ready to lead her people, protect her world, and step boldly into the adventures yet to come.